Hey, what's going on, guys? Brian from Zombie Guitar here. Here in this video, I want to teach you how to quickly learn songs by ear. So you can learn just the rhythm, you can learn the leads, you can take a song and you can turn it into an acoustic version of a song, even if it's not even a guitar song at all. Basically, you can do all that stuff pretty easily, and I'm going to show you how to do all that stuff in the video. So a lot of people think this is some kind of amazing skill that only certain people are born with. People that don't play music look at me and they're like, wow, how did you learn that song so quick? Well, you just have to understand some fundamentals, all of which I'm going to show you in this video. So before I get started, I always like to say, just check out my website, Zombie Guitar. If you like my videos here on YouTube, all of my lessons are freely available on my website, which is zombieguitar.com, and everything's much more organized. Every lesson comes with the video that is on YouTube, but it also comes with a written lesson. It also comes with all the diagrams and all the charts and stuff that I use in my videos. So every lesson is much more in-depth and detailed and organized when you view it from the site. Then I have the full access members area where you can access all my courses and my thousands of video backing tracks and whatnot. So it's a really cool website. I think you'll like it. Check that out. With that said, let's get started with the lesson. Alright, so there's 5 main parts to this process of learning a song by ear. These parts aren't in any necessary order, but I'm going to just tell you all 5 first, and then we're going to go over each one in detail. So they are, number 1, you want to quickly determine the key of the song, and you want to use your pentatonic position number 1 to help you do so. It's a very, very quick way that you can instantly find the key in a matter of seconds. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you want to determine what type of chord progression it is. So even if it's a song that has a lot of fills, a lot of leads, even if it's not on guitar, there's usually an underlying chord progression that the song is, and you just want to be able to figure that out very quickly as well, using the circle of fifths to help you do so. So that's the second thing. The third thing is you want to be able to transpose from, one key to another key to suit your voice. If you're singing, or if your band wants to play in a different key or whatever, you want to be able to quickly transpose into another key. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing is you want to quickly be able to determine any out of key chords. Okay, so once you know what key you're in, sometimes you're going to notice that there's random chords that aren't part of the key. You want to be able to quickly determine what those are as well. So that's the fourth thing. And then the fifth thing is you want to be able to use the key scale to help you figure out any leads or any solos or any fills or anything like that. All right, so those are the 5 parts. So let's look at each of those in detail now. All right, so I'm going to use Guns N' Roses' November Rain as my example to teach these concepts. And this is a good song example because, number 1, it's played on the piano. So it's not even a guitar song until the solo kicks in. Part 5 of this video is going to be how to, go about learning a solo by ear. But, so it's a piano song, first of all. Number 2, Guns N' Roses tunes everything 1 half step down from standard. So all the guitars are 1 half step down. This guitar is in standard, so it's not matched up with the key of what Guns N' Roses are doing. So let's just say I'm just, some guy that wants to learn how to quickly strum some acoustic chords, make up a acoustic version of November Rain, and then go and play it at open mic night tonight. And I want to just quickly figure out the chord progression, and I'm going to do so by ear. So the first thing I do is I use pentatonic position number 1 to help me figure out the key very quickly. So there's only 12 possible pentatonic position number 1s that will work over the song. So if I started out, in the open position here, that's one of the possible 12. I could start off on the 1st to 4th fret. That's another possibility. I could start on the 2nd to the 5th fret. All right, and then I would just keep trying each one until I find the one that works. Once I got up to the 12th fret here, I'm just repeating myself. I'm just an octave higher at that point. So it's the same thing as playing open. So somewhere in between the open pentatonic position number 1 range and up here, there's going to be one that fits perfectly over the over the song, and that's going to tell me what key I'm in. So let me just show you how I do that real quick using an example. Okay, so as you saw there, pentatonic position number 1 worked best when played from the 4th to the 7th fret range. So none of these really sounded good. Then once I got here, everything just clicked. I was noodling around in the pentatonic scale. All of the notes worked over all of the chords. That told me that that was where my key was. I could have continued trying all of the pentatonic positions, but there's really no point because I already found it. All right, so you can just it just locks in. You just know that's the one. So once you find the pentatonic position that works, you then know which key you are based on where your first finger and where your pinky finger are. So my first finger was on the 4th fret here. My pinky finger was on the 7th fret here. So the 4th fret is the note G sharp. The 7th fret is the note B. So wherever your pinky falls, that's the major key. Wherever your first finger falls, that's the minor key. So this pentatonic position tells me that this song is either in the key of G sharp minor, because your first finger represents where the minor is, or this is in the key of B major, because your pinky represents where the major is. So right there I say, okay, I know this song is either in B major or G sharp minor. They're the same key. They're the relative major minor pair of each other. I have a few lessons on that. I'll link you to those below. But that's step 1. I know my key now. Let's now look at the chord progression with this information. Okay, so once you know what key you're in, then you only have a handful of chords from which to use that are part of the key. So every possible key, there's 12 possible keys. There's 3 major chords per key and 3 minor chords per key. And you can use your circle of fifths to help you figure out what those chords are. So we determined that this is either the key of B major or G sharp minor. That's a relative major minor pair. B major is the major version of G sharp minor. G sharp minor is the minor version of B major. It's the same key. Within that key, there's 3 major chords and 3 minor chords that could be used that are part of the key, and your circle of fifths groups them like so in a grouping of 6. So you can see B major is on the outer circle in the center. You can see G sharp minor is on the inner circle in the center. And then the chords surrounding that in the grouping of 6 are the possible chords that are part of this particular key. So when I'm going to figure out this song by ear, I only have to try out 6 chords. I don't have to try out all these different chords, just these 6, all right? So let me give you a quick demonstration of me just strumming along and then figuring out what the correct chords are. so as you saw there, all of the chords that I was strumming along with, playing along with the music, I was in this key of either B major or G sharp minor. I was pulling from those 6 possible chords that were found in the grouping of 6 on the circle of fifths, and everything was working. And all of the chords that I was using were right there in that grouping of 6. So let me now move on to part 3, where I'll show you how to transpose into any other key very quickly. Okay, so once you know what key you're in, and then you know how to determine the available chords that are part of that particular key, the next thing you want to understand is how to determine the function of each chord within the key. So what this will allow you to do is, number 1, you can take the chord progression of the song that you're playing and you can transpose it into another key if you want to, in order to suit the voice of the singer. Or if you're the singer, in order to fit your voice and your particular vocal range. Or it'll also allow you to simply just listen to a song and instantly recognize the type of chord progression it is. So you may listen to a song and say, okay, that's a 1-5-6-4 chord progression. And then you can basically just pick up your guitar, go home, figure out the key real quick, and just play a 1-5-6-4 progression, and boom, you've already figured out that song. So let me explain what I mean. So you take your circle of fifths. We are in the key of B major / G sharp minor. And you assign a Roman numeral to each of these 6 chords. So major chords get an uppercase Roman numeral, minor chords get a lowercase Roman numeral. So within the grouping of 6, the center chord in the outer circle is the 1 chord. The inner circle counterclockwise position is the 2 chord. Inner circle clockwise position is the 3 chord. Outer circle counterclockwise is the 4 chord. Outer circle clockwise position is the 5 chord. Inner circle middle position is the 6 chord. All right, so using the example from November Rain, we have something that goes like this. Okay, so it kind of just keeps looping that around. So that is an E to a C sharp minor to a B major. So E is your 4 chord, C sharp minor is your 2 chord, and then B major would be your 1 chord. So this is a 4-2-1 progression. So if you wanted to play a 4-2-1 progression in any other key, you could do so. So let's try playing it in C. We'll play it in the key of C major / A minor. All right, so let's play a 4-2-1 progression. See how it sounds the same? It's just a different key now. F is your 4 chord in this key, D minor is your 2 chord in this key, C major is your 1 chord in this key. We could try it in the key of G major / E minor if you want. So 4-2-1 would be C major to A minor to G major. So. Okay, so you see how that works? So anytime you hear a chord progression on the radio, and even if you don't have your guitar with you, you can just kind of try and listen, be like, okay, that sounds like a 4 chord, or that sounds like a 2 chord, or that sounds like a 1 chord, and try to get into the habit of hearing how each of these chords functions within a key. That way you can just recognize the type of chord progression and immediately just know what's going on. Okay, so that's very, very important. So that's the third thing, understanding the chords function within a key. Okay, so the next thing that you want to be able to do is to be able to listen for out-of-key chords. So, once you figure out your key, you can then figure out the 3 major chords and the 3 minor chords that are part of that key, and you can use your circle of fifths to help you out, like we already talked about. But then you're going to start noticing that some other chords are going to be thrown into the mix. So those are what are known as non-diatonic chords or out-of-key chords. So those chords are generally not just chosen at random. There's usually a method to them, and that method is it's called borrowing from parallel keys. Now I made another lesson explaining this concept, borrowing chords from the parallel key. But just to demonstrate real quick, let's take the key of C major, for example. So you have C major or A minor, whatever you want to call this. C major would be the major version of this key. A minor is the minor version of this key. These are your 3 major, 3 minor chords for that key. You can look to the key of C minor. Okay, so if C major is the key we're in, the parallel minor key would be C minor. So you have these 6 chords that you could possibly use within your chord progression. You could also look at your original key, C major / A minor. You could look at it and say that, okay, we're in the key of A minor, and then I want to look at the parallel key, which would be the key of A major. So again, you have these chords to pull from. So you have all these extra available chords that can be used within your chord progressions, non-diatonic chords that will work within the particular key signature that you're working in. Now, more often than not, when a chord is borrowed from a parallel key, it's pretty much going to be a major chord most of the time. So if you're in the key of C major, A minor, that's the key you're working in. You want to borrow something from the key of C minor, the parallel key of C minor. You have these 3 chords to borrow from, okay? Not to say that you can't borrow the minor chords from that parallel key, but usually it's just the major chords that are borrowed. Same thing if you go in the other direction. If you want to borrow from the parallel key of A major, the major chords would be the chords that are most likely to be used. All right, so that's just a little explanation about how you can go about borrowing chords from parallel keys. But just to even simplify things a little bit more, you can, there's 2 very, very commonly used non-diatonic chords that work really, really well within a key. And they are, number 1, you can take the minor 3 chord, which when you're in the inner circle clockwise position, that's the minor 3 chord. You can often make that major. So whether you're in the key of A minor or you're in the key of C major, it doesn't really matter. Just that chord right there, which is diatonic, would be the E minor chord. You can make that an E major chord, and it's going to sound great. So let me show you what that would sound like. Okay, so right there I put an E major chord in the key of C major. So you could look at that E major chord as borrowed from a parallel key, or you can just kind of just think, okay, took the minor 3 chord, made that major. That's a common substitution that you're going to come across, and that's going to sound good. You're going to hear that all the time. So that 3 chord made major, very, very common. The other one is the 4 chord, which is a major chord. A lot of times you're going to hear a major 4 chord followed by a minor 4 chord, and then it's going to move to the 1 chord. So again, if you're in the key of C major, F major is your 4 chord. So you're going to hear something like this. Okay, so you're going to hear that a lot. I just used the key of C here just to kind of demonstrate this example. November Rain doesn't really have any non-diatonic chords, at least none that jumped out at me. I didn't really learn the entire song start to finish, but I'm pretty sure November Rain's just 100%, everything's in key. But, when you do start to learn these songs and you start to learn your in-key chords and stuff, and you start hearing a chord that's not part of the key but still sounds good, now you have some places to look. Look to your parallel keys, and then look at that 3 chord made major, look at that 4 chord made minor, and that should get you started, all right? So part 5 is going to be about learning how to figure out solos by ear. Okay, so now we're on part 5 of this lesson. Now we're looking at how to figure out solos and fills and leads and all that kind of stuff by ear. So this is definitely the hardest part of the whole thing. Figuring out the chord progression is relatively simple in comparison, but as long as you know what key you're in, that's a very, very good starting point, because when you're trying to figure out a solo by ear, you know the key. So the person that's doing the solo, they're playing in the key. The solo is going to sound good because it's in key. All right, there may be an out of key note here and there. If an out of key chord is being used, you know, they may target chord tones of that particular out of key chord. But for the most part, you have a roadmap of notes from which to choose from, and those are going to be the scale. So going back to the example of November Rain, we had determined that this is the key of B major. So if it's in the key of B major, what scale you're going to use? The B major scale. The B major scale is going to be the scale that you use to play over, you know, all of the chords. All of the chords are part of the key of B major. The B major scale is going to be the soloing framework that you use to solo over all the chords. Okay, so, you know, I have lots of lessons that teach you how to play in key up and down the fretboard. The lead guitar fundamentals course, which is part of the website, part of my website, that goes really into depth as how to play in key up and down the fretboard. But just to simplify things, just to, you know, for the purposes of this lesson, you can just pick one simple position and you can figure out most of the solo right in that position. Okay, so what you see here on the screen, this is a fretboard diagram of the B major scale spanned up and down the entire fretboard. Now this may look overwhelming to you if you don't, if you don't know the various different patterns and you don't know how to play in key up and down the fretboard. As I said, there's lots of stuff on my website that goes very, very in depth as to how to do that, all the patterns, all the positions, all that stuff. But just for the purposes of this lesson, let's just focus on one simple area. So keep in mind the red dot indicates your note B, that's your scale root. The rest of the black dots are the remaining notes that are part of the B major scale. This B major scale spans many octaves, many different positions, okay? So let's just simplify it. Let's just stick right to this 4th to 7th fret region, which is where we started out in part 1 of this lesson. So 4th to 7th is that pentatonic position number 1. So that's this right here. If you want to add in your remaining scale notes, the remaining diatonic notes that are not part of the pentatonic scale but are still part of the B major scale, you would have this. Alright, so we're just right here. So that's our roadmap. So I'm sure you've heard the November Rain solo number 1 before. I'm not here to teach you how to play that solo in this lesson. I do teach that in another lesson. But just for this lesson, I want you to know how to do this for yourself. The object is for you to learn how to do this by ear. So we're just going to figure out the notes that Slash is playing. I'm not going to add his swag. I'm not going to, we'll get to the swag part later. But let's just figure out the notes for now. So something like this. Alright, so what I did there was a very, very cheesy, very choppy, very non-swagged up version of the beginning of that solo. Alright, I was just playing the notes. I wasn't doing any bends. I wasn't adding the Slash swag to it. I was just playing the notes. I wanted to show you that everything can be found as part of the B major scale. And not only, just confined to this area, these little 4-fret area. And just on the upper 3 strings for that matter. So everything that was done right there was just using those notes. B major scale, between the 4th and the 7th fret, played on just the G, B, and E string, okay? So after you know how to play the solo, or after you know the notes of the solo, you figure that part out. Alright, so just kind of cheesy like that. Now add the swag to it. You know the notes, so instead of starting on this note here, you can kind of hear that Slash is bending to it. You see how you go and add the bends, you add the slides. The notes are still the same. You're still playing within the same framework of notes. you're just adding the swag to it now. So figure out the notes first, add the swag second, okay? And then after he's done with this area here, after he's done with the little 4th to 7th fret area, he then jumps up to what I refer to as the A string home box. It's the second most commonly used position by most guitar players when they solo. So this would be the home box, pentatonic position number 1. The A string home box is where you locate your root note with your pinky for a major key. This is B major, so locate your note B on the A string. So here's your note B, 14th fret. So this is the second area that he's in. All right, so he does something like there it is. So after he does that little lead into this next area, then the next part of the solo takes place all in this little A string home box area. All right, so after he's this, I was all right there in that little A string home box. Then he jumps up to here. And again, this is pentatonic position number 1 again, but just in the higher octave now. We started out in this area. Now we're up here in this higher octave. So that's the note B right there. Obviously, the note B is part of the B major scale. And then he just uses a little scale run, running down the E string. All part of B major scale. You see how this is working? I'm not teaching you how to play the solo. I'm not holding your hand. I'm not giving you the tabs for it. I want you to know how to do this by yourself. And you do this by yourself by understanding simple fundamentals. This is the key of B major. Here's your 1 pattern to play in. When he's done there, he then jumps up to this pattern. Okay, then he hits that high note, then he comes back down. And then he does a little slash run, which I don't remember exactly how it goes. I would have to refresh myself using my own lesson that I taught on this song about a year ago. He does something. Something like that. I don't remember exactly what it is, but still, it's all part of the scale. All right, so as long as you know the key, as long as you know a couple patterns, a couple basic movable patterns on the guitar, you can figure out solos pretty easily because you have your roadmap. All right, so that last part there was arguably the hardest part of all. It's very hard to just teach someone how to figure out solos by ear, but like I said, if you can understand the fundamentals of music, if you can understand how to determine what key you're in, and then you can just have a couple basic points of reference on the fretboard. You have your home box, otherwise known as pentatonic position number 1. You have your A string home box, that's just my name for it, otherwise known as pentatonic position number 4. Then he jumps up to the home box again, up in the higher register, otherwise known as pentatonic position number 1. You know, if you can find your reference points and you memorize those patterns, you have your roadmap of notes from which to choose from. That'll help you a lot in figuring out which notes are used in the solo. Once you figure out the notes that are used in the solo, go ahead and add the, add the bends, add the slides, add the vibrato, add the slash swag to it, and get the solo sounding exactly right. But having that roadmap of notes is fundamental to making this stuff come very quickly like that. But anyway, so that's going to be it. Again, check out my website, Zombie Guitar. Check out the free members area. Check out the full access members area. Lots of cool stuff. I think you'll really like it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.